Hey, what's up, everyone? It is Sunday, May 3rd, and so working hard on a Sunday here. I'm with a very good friend of mine, Mitch Gold. Mitch, say what's up.
Hey guys, what's going on? Good to be here.
So Mitch is, again, a good friend of mine. He works out at my gym. He's also on the board at at another big community center here in Kansas City. Mitch is an industrial psychologist, and Mitch, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you actually help develop surveys for pretty much large corporations and consult on the responses of those surveys for both customers and employee engagement surveys. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're right on. We basically my job is to help companies understand what are the biggest drivers of things that employees experience that are ultimately going to drive employee satisfaction and ultimately loyalty and retention.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
So Mitch, kick-ass CrossFitter as well. He has done several surveys again for our gym, for Kansas Athletic Club, to give us insight into the sentiment of our customers, how they feel about value, perceived value at Kansas Athletic Club. And so we actually approached Mitch, what was it, probably a week and a half ago. We put this together in a pretty short period of time here to try to put together some sort of a survey to get a pulse on gym members from anywhere in the world, particularly the U.S., and how they felt about returning to the gym in a post-COVID world, right? A post-COVID environment and what that looks like. So I'm just going to kind of go through the questions first and then kind of hand it over to Mitch, and we'll dive through the results. So
Sounds great.
The first couple were just kind of based around city size, area of the United States that these individuals lived in, area of the United States also aligned with the most recent, with the census, with the U.S. Census that just went out. I'm looking forward to getting back into the gym, so the actual physical location, as soon as possible. And of course, on a lot of these questions, they had to agree, moderately agree, strongly agree, moderately disagree, disagree, strongly disagree. I'm not at all concerned about safety, COVID-19 concerns. Once my gym reopens for business, if my gym were to reopen tomorrow, I would be going back, and this is just a time frame question. Upon returning to the gym, I plan on attending classes, and again, this is trying to gauge frequency, preferred workout time, and then upon returning to the gym, I plan to spend most of my fitness focus in the area of, and then we kind of listed some different modality options there. Primary fitness goal, general health, strength training, weight loss, so on and so forth. This was an interesting one. If offered, I will be making use of my gym's online programming and resources. And then, what is one thing you would want your gym owner to know as you make a decision to return to your gym? Okay, so those were the questions that were asked. And let me back up here to the overall demographics and kind of turn this over to Mitch. Mitch, just tell me if there's a certain thing you want me to highlight or show here, as in which tabs you kind of want to work through.
Will do. Thanks, Nick. And yeah, just again, thanks for having me. And absolutely, this was a fun effort in terms of really, fast tracking this, turning it around in about a week and a half. I know all of you all as gym owners are probably asking the question, what, regardless of federal or state guidelines, what have you, what is really on my members' mind? And again, that was the whole purpose of the survey. So what we're looking at right now, Nick took you through some of the questions, and what we're looking at right now, just in terms of some of the pure demographics, we were able to categorize all of your respondents. So one of the things you can see here is we've got people that fell into, in what kind of size city does your gym reside? And you can see that of all of your folks that responded, which was close to 500, about 43% actually fell into gyms that are part of what would be considered cities that are smaller, 100,000 people or less. So that gives us kind of a good idea. You've got another quarter of you that fall into that medium, that 100,000 to 300,000, and then accordingly getting a little bit larger. But you can see close to half actually fell into that small size. One of the other things that Nick also alluded to was, well, what area are folks responding to when it comes to area of the United States? And what you're seeing here is we actually, in addition to what I'd call large geographic area, you can see these things are broken apart by what we call census regions. So you can see here, yeah, we've got the Midwest area, but we've got a couple different areas, census areas within that. And you can see that, again, when it just came to pure respondents, almost a quarter of everybody came from the Midwest, specifically that West, North, Central region. So you got your Dakotas, Kansas, right, Nick, our good old home there, Nebraska, yep. Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, et cetera. And then you can also see almost 30%, when we lump them together, came from that West region, specifically the West Coast, as well as you got your Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, et cetera, et cetera. So this is just kind of pure demographics in terms of where are most people that are responding actually coming from. And there are some implications to that as we get a little bit further into the data.
Yeah, and Mitch, on your opinion, is this survey count high enough in order to extrapolate some good enough data to make decisions off of, in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, on the one hand, you could say, well, geez, we released this survey to how many possible gyms and respondents and what have you, and is, around 500, is that really what we would call a good representative sample? Well, it might be small in the whole context of things, but honestly, when you start getting into hundreds of respondents, you start to see some pretty concrete patterns that are what I would consider to be representative, valid, and reliable, that probably represent what's on everybody's mind right now. So short answer, yes, I'd say it is.
Perfect.
All right. So this is where the data, I think, starts to get interesting, because, beyond demographics, now what we did is let's kind of cut those demographics across some really important questions. And one of the most important questions is, do I plan on going back to the gym? And if so, when? And so you can see across the top here, we had some responses. People were either saying, no, I'm not going back to the gym, or yes, I'm immediately going back, or hey, when a vaccine's available, I will, or within a few months, or within the next couple of weeks, or within the month. Those are our responses. And as your eyes kind of dart around to the color coding here, if we go back to immediately, you can see that half, right? Slightly over half of the people that responded are like, when that gym opens, I am ready to go back immediately. And that's a really important data point for you all, in terms of if you're wondering whether people are going back, and if you open your doors, are there going to be people coming in? The short answer is yes. People are going to be coming back. And in fact, if we sort of lump the data, go beyond the immediately, and now let's look into the next 1 to 2 weeks within the next month, put those together, and you've got another 30% of people that are going to be back at your gym within the next month. And my guess is some of those are probably even hedging their bets a little bit, and will probably come back a little bit sooner than within the next month.
Or at least that you can potentially influence them to come back sooner.
Yes, that's a great way of putting it, Nick. And again, so think about, gym owners, think about it this way. 4 out of 5 of your members are likely going to be coming back real soon.
Yep.
That's what this data is telling us.
Yeah, I actually had a great conversation with one of our members yesterday, and he wasn't 100% sure on when he would be coming back into the gym, or even what could make him feel safe about coming back into the gym. And as we talked through all the potential, precautions and different kind of what the new Kansas Athletic Club looks like as we open our doors, I got the feeling that he was much more likely to return sooner after we had that conversation than later. Right. And so we'll talk about that just a little bit more, but I do want to say, like, putting yourself out there to your members and explaining every little thing that you're doing, and even the things that you are considering, is always going to help at least let them know that you're thinking through it in an intelligent manner. And that is what they want to see.
Nick, that's a great point. And, related to, I think, some of the other survey work you and I have done together, you might recall that in just overall member engagement surveys, you might recall that whole communication piece is such a driver of member loyalty, member retention, and the likelihood to recommend to other members, hey, this place is awesome because my owners communicate.
Right.
Yeah, great. All right. So guys, you can also see, yeah, so back to this again, just summary point. We got most people ready to come back and come back now. And again, we've got just some breakouts here, you know, by geographic area, what have you. But again, the big story about that was people are ready to come back. How often are people ready to come back? And here's what it is. 3 to 5 times a week. You've got 2/3 respondents that, you know, not only are willing to come back, but when they come back, they're going to be in the gym on average 3 to 5 times a week. That's pretty big there. Yep. And if you look at that lighter green there, you got another 15% that are chomping at the bit that are going to be coming back more than 5 times a week. So you've got basically close to 82% of that sample there that are going to be coming 3, 4, 5 or more times per week when it's time to open. So again, if any of you are wondering, don't wonder anymore, because it's going to happen, and it's going to happen big.
Yep. Yeah, I think the important thing for this is that, you know, as people look at the potential for, you know, if I go to the grocery store every single day, then my risk of, you know, catching coronavirus and getting COVID-19 should be higher. So the fact that this shows me that people are looking at still coming to the gym 3 to 5 times per week or more than 5 times per week in the largest quantity starts to at least maybe show that whole theory of like, if I go to the same place all the time and it's a high risk place, then I won't be, you know what I mean? Then I'm at risk here, right? So to me, it maybe starts to show that this is potentially could be viewed even as a safer place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So there are some interesting things that are going on here as well. And Nick showed just a few of those other survey questions that we had talked about. So here's a few. 3 really important ones. If offered, I'll be making use of my gym's online programming resources, the Zoom, the Facebook Lives you all have been doing with your members, any kind of instructional or guided videos. The couple other questions, I'm not at all concerned about safety once my gym reopens for business. So let me reiterate that. It's not I am concerned, it's I am not at all concerned. So I feel really good walking in, right? And then I'm looking forward to getting back into my gym as soon as possible. So let's go back up to that first question, because I think here are some of the most interesting insights here. So if offered, I'll be making use of my gym's online programming resources. And so look what we have here across that 6-point scale of what we call favorability, from strongly agree to strongly disagree. Look what's shaded here in green, right? We've got, look at this. So we've got, just in terms of those strongly agrees and agrees, so we often call that kind of top 2 box of favorability, right? 50%. We've got 50%, slightly more than 50% that are saying, heck yes. If you're still offering this, I am going to be making use of those online programming resources. We've got another 22% that are even moderately agreeing with that. So think about that. Despite the fact that we're going to be opening our doors and we've got people coming back on average pretty quickly within the month and 3, 4, 5 or more times a week, we still have 3/4 of people that are saying they still plan on making use of those online resources that were available before. It is amazing. It is amazing.
Yeah, I think that gosh, this industry has been so built up on the need for brick and mortar. I think in most of these boutique fitness studios, you know, ours included. It's, if you're in front of us, we can train you, we can coach you. And if not, we provide some programming you can do at home, but it's not really a thing for us, right? Like coming to the doors, man, this just is like kind of jaw dropping to show that. I don't know if this sentiment has always been there and kind of underlying, or if this is a direct result of COVID. But regardless, it shows that the demand is there for us to keep doing online in some way, shape, or form for our population.
Absolutely. Well, and I'll share just a quick little story. I have been doing, for that community center that I'm on the board of, you mentioned, I have been doing virtual assault bike sessions that I've been leading for a number of members who have borrowed assault bikes. And we finished up a workout yesterday, and one of the members said, you know, this is going to sound really weird, but I almost don't want us to open up anytime soon because I don't want to give my bike back. I've loved these sessions that we're doing here. These are like getting me through this is my medicine.
Yep.
Right here. So I think something profound has really happened as we've been forced to innovate and do this in a different way in terms of using technology.
For sure.
It's been cool. I think what's really interesting as we kind of dig into this question, so look at what we're seeing here, and I'm going to interpret the data a little bit. What these numbers you're seeing, so when we kind of break things down, for example, by geographic area, to the right, when you see that average, that is basically that same question. We asked it on that 6-point scale. All you're seeing here is that average on that 6-point scale. So obviously, as we get closer to 6, which is strongly agree, that's more favorable. Now you can see that all the numbers here across those regions are somewhere in the 4, but these are statistically significant differences. And you can see that the South and the West are significantly lower in their ratings than the Midwest and the Northeast.
Does that mean that they, in the South and the West, that they are less likely to participate in some of the online or digital resources that a gym deploys?
That's exactly what it means. And again, if we went back to percentages and kind of converted percentages, it means we would have fewer percentage of people basically agreeing or strongly agreeing with this statement in the South and the West. And what I thought would be interesting is, okay, well, let's break that down a little bit more by census region and see where that's coming from. And sure enough, when we get into the South, that lower rating, that 4.17, is actually being pulled down by states in that South Atlantic region. Your West Virginias, your Maryland, your Delaware, DC, Virginia, and your Carolinas. Right? So that gives us a little bit of insight there, as well as, right, our Oklahomas, our Texas, our Arkansas. What's really interesting is when we look at the West, right? That West is in particular being pulled down by our Montanas, our Idahos, New Mexico, what have you. And look at that, the score is a 3.94. That's actually the only score, with the exception of that small sample, the outside of the United States, which is only 2, that's actually in unfavorable territory on that scale that we talked about. And so, there's a good possibility, let's ask the question, why do we think that's happening?
I mean, my first hunch, especially as we went over this the other day just yesterday, was if I'm in Colorado and, I've got a mountain bike, let's mountain bike. If I can go hike in the mountains, if I can go, run on the beach. I know some beaches have been closed and there's some protests over that in California, so on and so forth. But if I have maybe some of these other recreational opportunities in my area, whereas for Kansas, where am I going to go hike, right? Like through a wheat field here, not a lot of great hiking around.
I think we have 2 hills here.
Exactly. So I just think that maybe shows the what are the options that are available. So to me, the reason why this is important, besides the fact that it shows what's obvious, is that there's a lot of gym owners that have fired off a lot of questions like, should I keep doing Zoom classes? And it's not as easy as yes, and it's not as easy as no. It's where are you? What part of the country are you in? Is your population more centered around going out and doing things? Are you down in Tahoe, where you can, and all your clients have boats and they go out and water ski, now that the weather's looking nice, right? Like, there's so many it depends. And I think that this just points that out, including this next one, right?
Yes. So we're breaking down the same question, but now by that city population size that we talked about. And boy, you look at such an even larger disparate difference here. I mean, there's almost there's a 3/4 or more scale point difference between people responding to this question in cities greater than 1 million versus that next step down, which is what we consider large cities, 300,000 to 1 million. So look how, relatively pumped up people are about using those resources in the 300,000 to 1 million. But man, once you get over populations more than 1 million, it plummets.
This was so counterintuitive to me. I would have assumed that if you were in New York City or a big city where this virus had affected it to the degree that we've all been, shown through the media, the last thing I would want to do would be out and about. I would want to be inside my apartment or my studio or my home or whatever, working out. But that doesn't appear to be the case. And, I'd obviously love to know more as far as what the reason is for this. I think we can only take our best guesses at it. I thought through, like, maybe they have better access to parks because of the fact that it's a densely populated city. So normally when you see that, there's a lot of parks and free zoos in Chicago, things like that you can go and do with the family, right? So
absolutely. In fact, I was thinking about this as well. I lived in Chicago for 4 years, and I get back there from time to time, and there's one particular CrossFit gym that I go to, and I could totally see them. Remember, it's just a gym, it's just a sample size of one we're talking about in the context of this result. But they do many times when the weather is nice, they will take part of their workouts outside. Right. And I could totally see that being part of this right now. What's driving a response like that? Yeah.
So next question.
Yeah. So this next question around safety. I'm not at all concerned about safety once my gym reopens for business. And, Nick, you and I had a good discussion around this. I was looking more at this red category here, saying, oh, wow, look, 50% of the people are actually disagreeing with this. And then, you're like, well, yeah, but, the same percentage are not worrying about this at all. So, it just depends on how you look at this. But yeah, the reality is we've got a split here. 1 and 2 people actually are not concerned about this. And again, it just kind of depends on how you look at this, because on the one hand, we've got 50% that are still thinking about it, but couple that with what we talked about a few segments ago around the fact that, look, people are chomping at the bit to get back into the gym. It's not like this is going to keep people from getting back, but I think the big highlight is, gym owners, you need to know that as people are clamoring to come back in, they've not forgotten about this. They're thinking about it. It's going to be on their mind, and in a second we'll see exactly what's on their mind. So they're thinking about it.
And to me, this just speaks directly to the polarization that you're seeing in social media comments and threads and forums about COVID-19, about people saying you have to open up and people saying you have to close. And it's like this very, very much like if you flip a coin, and this just shows if you flip a coin, you got a 50-50 chance that you're going to be talking to someone who thinks that you're a villain if you're going to open. They think you're a villain if you want to stay closed, right?
Yes.
And I think that's even further proof by the fact that even amongst the disagrees, everything is spread out. Even amongst the agrees, everyone is spread out. So
yeah, it's almost like this just symmetrical distribution where you've got like equal numbers of people on both ends of the tail. It's pretty fascinating. It's pretty fascinating. Really quickly, the last one, I'm looking forward to getting back into my gym as soon as possible. Heck yes, they are. Look at that. You got 80% that, again, are what we call top 2 box, agree, strongly agree. If you throw that moderately agree in, man, we've got 95% of our people to some degree are looking forward to getting back into the gym. So if you guys had any doubts, those doubts should be squashed at this point.
Yep, for sure.
We did one more thing. We just wanted to kind of understand, as people come back, is there a new normal in all this when it comes to the types of class times people are looking at? And just a little bit of a caveat here. Keep in mind, when people responded to this, it wasn't like they were responding to the single best option. Some people were putting, oh, well, I would come early morning and mid-morning. Or, oh, you know what? I would do the late afternoon, early evening, and evening classes. Keep that in mind. But obviously you can see here that most of our people are indeed coming from the tails. So you got your early mornings and your mid mornings, which make up about half of those respondents. And then you've got this another surge as you start to get again towards the end of the workday, that early evening. And Nick, I know you had a hypothesis about what you might see, right?
Yeah, the reason that this question got thrown in here, kind of last minute, to be quite honest with you, was just due to the fact that if we transition the world to a remote work environment, what does that look like for someone's, when they come to the gym? If
Right.
suddenly you don't have to be butt in a chair in your cubicle at 8 a.m. and leaving the office at 5 p.m., maybe an 11 a.m. class time or a 10 a.m. class time can actually be a peak class time as opposed to maybe the old ways. So obviously we didn't have anything to baseline this against. It was just wanted to see what the responses would be and if maybe gym populations were going to shift a little bit. And I don't think that that's the case just yet, but it'd be interesting if anyone out there ever does pulse surveys to their population, asking something along these lines, if they're looking to maybe change the time in which they come in a post-COVID world, I think would be interesting.
I do too. I do too. Very cool. Hey, one last thing, guys. So we also asked one open-ended question, essentially around, hey, what's the one thing, as we're reopening or what have you, you would want your gym owner to know. So you can see here lots of different feedback and what have you that came in.
Tons of good comments.
Tons of good ones. So we basically fed this through a word cloud, just basically an algorithm that looks at all these comments. And you can see in this word cloud, as words become bigger, the letters become thicker. Essentially, that's just a measure of how frequent the term essentially was mentioned. And you can start to see how some of these things cluster together. Long story short, as you start to look through these things, you can see again, people obviously ready to come back, but you can see the things that are on people's mind.
Boy,
cleanliness,
equipment.
Yes. Key. And there is a reason those things are together. That those are things people are thinking about. Clean equipment, right?
Yep.
Sanitation, wipes, distancing. A lot. You can see the things that are basically on people's mind. Most of them, not all, but most have to do with health, with safety, with cleanliness, with distancing. Right? People still want to see good workouts. They still want to see good classes. They want to get back to a community.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But you can clearly see, back to that safety question, it is definitely on people's minds right now.
Yep. Yeah. So to me, what this shows, or what all the results of this show, is that this isn't changing the mindset of people still clamoring for community. But remember, community in our past has always been done on volume of people. Maybe it were these big gym events or big competitions. So what this really tells me is be forthright with what we're doing, the precautions we're taking, how we're cleaning, and what we're willing to do. So in addition to that, start wrapping your head around ways to create community outside of big crowds, whether that is micro groups, all driving towards the same maybe charitable cause. So right. I've seen some gym owners talk about Murphys coming up. What about running Murph every hour for a small group for the entire day, and doing it obviously to raise money, right? Like there's a lot of different things that I think you can do to still, we're all working together towards the same mission. That's community, but we don't have to be in a big room together doing it in a way that feels maybe a little bit socially irresponsible in this time.
Absolutely. And Nick, I guess one last thing I would say, we didn't necessarily ask it in this survey, but with a lot of the survey work you and I have seen before, members again quite often are taking their lead from the coach, right? The coach is such a huge influencer in all this. So to your point around these micro groups or micro tribes, I've seen some gyms be enormously successful at essentially assigning coaches to these teams of members. Mm-hmm. and creating kind of these sub teams, not to create any separation or elitism. That's not what we're talking about. But I think this is a wonderful opportunity as gyms reopen, as people come back in, for coaches to be leaders and to essentially lead these smaller groups of types of members to get them back in, get them engaged, and get them back up to where they were before.
Yeah. And on that note, I think maybe one final point here to drive home before we break and get back to family time, Mitch, would be that to me, the 50-50 split on the, the question about being afraid to come back to the gym. The safety piece. Yeah. To me, one action item that I think could come from that, because we know that people are not necessarily going to feel safe, but they're still saying that they're going to come back to the gym. I think it's really important to actually be verbal and ask your community to respect the opinions of each other, right? Community is how we interact and how we operate as a unit. And that unit is now not fractured by their willingness to be in your gym, but how they feel about being in your gym. And we don't want it to become separated, because the part that feels safe can't respect or understand the group that feels unsafe, and the group that feels unsafe maybe looks upon the group that feels safe differently. So I think that it's really important to ask your community to respect each other and drive forward as a unit. And that, I think, would be my final ask of all of you, to make sure you do that at your communities, in your gyms.
Couldn't have said it better, Nick. Wonderful.
So, Mitch, man, thank you so much for all of the time. You're always a great blessing to have around and to have around the gym. For anyone that doesn't know, Mitch lives like a mile this way from me. So
that way,
hopefully the tracks will reopen here in Kansas City, and we're allowed to get in some more endurance workouts together. And guys, if you have any other questions, whenever we post this video, just put them in the comments. Mitch is also in the Gym Survival Guide. And so while I don't want to offer up his time or anything else, if you post something in there, I can make sure I relay some of the questions that are going on, and maybe get a couple answers from him while he's not busy helping out all the big employers around the country. So thank you guys all for listening. Have an awesome day.
All right. Bye-bye.